opposed?
What am I abstaining from?
Villages of Haymarket 2, item 7A.
I don't even see 7A on my,
On the agenda. 7A. Sure I've got all my stuff.
It's 7.
Oh, in that case, we'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Here?
Here?
Here.
yes, here.
Any announcements?
Want me to do this now?
Oh, yeah, please.
I would like to motion to amend the agenda to add zoning permit ZP 20121203. It is a sign permit for the Very Thing for Her located at 6630 Jefferson Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Mark that as item 5B, please. Okay, anything else? Citizens' time? Anybody like to address the Planning Commission? Seeing none, close citizens' time. Minutes.
Move to approve the minutes of our November 19th meeting as amended.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, zoning permit application, 1500 Gotham Manor Place, Mr. Schneider.
Mr. Chairman, this is for a deck within the Sherwood Forest developments. This property was before you last month for a fence. They're now back for a deck. We do require that decks over 36 inches only be allowed to encroach within 10 feet into the required yard. In this case, they're well outside the 20-foot required yard. So it does meet our requirements under Section 58-15B.
Notice reference to a fire pit. Does that have anything to do with this?
To a fire pit?
Or am I reading this wrong?
No, that's the color of their
Oh,
trucks, if I'm not
sorry.
mistaken.
I stand corrected.
I motion to approve zoning.
I'm sorry, you said it is outside of that. It's 20 feet or more.
Correct.
Outside of the criteria.
I'm sorry, I'm Mark Schneider. I'm the town
Okay,
planner.
I know who you are.
Nice to meet you.
That's cool. I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
I motion to approve zoning permit ZP 20121127 for a deck at 15000 Gotham Manor Place in accordance with 5815B.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously.
Yeah.
We're at the government. We're here to help.
Okay, zoning permit ZP 20121203, the very thing. Mr. Schneider.
Mr. Chairman, this is for a freestanding sign for the newly established Very Thing for Her. It's in the form of a freestanding hanging sign, but meets under our freestanding definition. It looks like a hanging sign, but it meets under our freestanding definition. Our requirements that it be lots 30 feet or more in road frontage are allowed to have freestanding signage. This does meet that requirement. We also have a requirement it has to be a minimum 10 feet back from the lot line. In this case, it's 21 feet. So they're proposing it just off the north corner of the porch, and it'll be up against the old fence post for the gate that was there. As part of the master plan that we hopefully will bring forward, the sign's likely to move, but in this case, given its location set back from the road, we feel it's appropriate and does meet the ordinance standard under the freestanding sign.
Does the owner know that the sign may have to move at some point in time?
I think she's generally aware that when we do the master plan, we'll have to.
Things may change.
Correct.
And this is similar to the sign over at the Madison Corner Shops?
This is similar to the one across the street for the optical, for the old post office.
Oh, okay.
So we recommended approval under subsection 58-343B2 freestanding signs.
I motion to approve zoning permit ZP 20121203 Everything for Her located at 6630 Jefferson Street in accordance with 58343B2.
I have a second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. ARB update. I'm assuming we haven't had an ARB update since our liaison hasn't had an opportunity to go, or did you?
No, I have my first
His
meeting
first
on the
meeting.
19th.
Okay, that's what I thought. Council update.
As I had a discussion with the chair, the council would like some further information from Planning Commission as to, our look at the historic overlay district.
Which I am putting together in somewhat of a report/PowerPoint form. I'm going to pass it around here. And I'll clean it up before the council meeting, and then either myself or Councilwoman Barra will present it.
Oh, I think Chair Weir will be handling that.
But as we suspected in looking at all the other local jurisdictions, there are only 10 towns in the Commonwealth that actually are part of the CLG or have been approved by the CLG, and as we suspected, their historic districts are significantly smaller than the entirety of the town, so we'll put it together and kind of get a sense of it from this map if you want to take a look at it. Sort of give it to council, let them digest it, and give us some guidance. The impact of that for us this evening, however, is that since they haven't given us any guidance on the size of the historic district and whether there's any sense that they wish to reduce the scope of it, I suspect there's a lot of text amendments that we wanted to talk about tonight that, quite frankly, I'm not inclined to waste a whole lot of time discussing, because I think one of the baselines that's going to have to be determined prior to going into those text amendments is whether or not we're going to reduce the historic district, because that will initiate a variety of other changes that we're going to have to make, particularly in the sign ordinance. Are we going to change our outlook of how it's based, whether it's based on zoning or whether it's based on geographic location, amongst other things. So I think when we get to the discussion of town-initiated zoning text amendments this evening, I think we're going to find that we're in a similar position that we were last month, and hopefully we can get some guidance from the council this month or in January and be able to address some of those issues.
It has been requested if I can get some information to have at our work session prior to the council meeting.
Done.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No.
New business. Villages of Haymarket Phase 2 site plan. Mr. Schneider.
Mr. Chairman, this is the final to the preliminary that you approved and reviewed earlier this year. The applicant's representative, John McBride, is here, as well as Mike Gorman, the owner, and they're here to answer any questions that you might have. Holly has two outstanding issues to let you through, but just real quick for background, this is 5 single-family lots proposed along Blight Drive. This is the residual parcel of the original Villages of Haymarket. In the initial discussions during the preliminary plan, there was some discussions initially about stormwater that may be generated by the development of the site. Also, landscaping, how to screen the Hariver properties and those public uses from these units. The applicant agreed to reduce the number of units, agreed to put in the required landscaping, has provided a maintenance and installation agreement to that effect, and also a stormwater maintenance agreement as well. So the application, absent these two issues that Holly will describe to you, is ready for action by the Commission. You do have 60 days from appearing on this agenda to make your recommendation to the Council.
Before you begin, Holly, do you want to recuse yourself from this matter?
Will be abstaining from this matter, as I'm a resident of the villages.
Adjacent property.
Throughout the course of the review process, the applicant has addressed all of my comments except for 2, and I'd like to address the 2 outstanding comments with you directly. The first comment has to do with the need for decorative street lighting and or a lighting plan. We started off asking for the decorative street lighting that we have along Washington Street, and it's on the north end of Blight Drive. And a lighting plan, and they replied that they would go ahead and get the yard lights, which is all that was provided on the interior of the villages, the first phase. I then asked for a lighting plan to demonstrate it would meet our ordinances, at which time the applicant asked to be able to address the plan. The second issue has to do with what to do with the Washington Street frontage. As you know, all of the Washington Street frontage properties, we have been having them do the ultimate streetscape development. Their frontage is so short, and it would not be developed on either side. I have serious concerns about having that portion developed, so I've actually come up with an idea that I knew would have to come through Planning Commission and Town Council anyhow, to escrow what those improvements would be, that could be turned over to the town whenever they develop the rest of the portion in front of the Hare River property. And the same issue came up with that. The applicant would actually like to hear directly from the Planning Commission and Town Council on what it is that they have to do with the frontage. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and invite the applicant to address these issues directly to you.
Well, before you do that, technical question, how far across the Hare River property are we currently carrying in this phase of the streetscape?
We are not, the only portion that the streetscape that is out there right now is doing this tiny existing. There are no ultimate improvements along the Hare River properties.
So the sidewalk stops where?
The sidewalk stops at the edge of the Baptist Church property.
Why was I under the impression it crossed over?
This is the church, Sandoval Hospital, 2 Hare River houses. So
The sidewalk actually stops at the edge of the church property.
it's from that hunting path all the way down.
So what you're looking at is,
Engineering a final phase all the way to the corner?
this is their frontage. This has not been developed, and then this is not developed. We are going to be developing up to, like I said, the sidewalk up to the edge of the Hare River property. If they were to develop this portion, it is a very short portion. It's not developed on either side. And then you're also, whenever this is developed, you've got 2 hard points that you're having to tie into. So it is truly up to the council and the planning commission on whether or not to require those improvements as part of this plans or to escrow. That would be the only alternative I could come up with for not actually building just such a short section. So I'd like to turn it over to the applicant.
That's what we're going to find out, I don't know.
Currently, we don't have a phase to do in front of food pantry and PD. That's going to be phase,
Phase
4Q or whatever, so.
I just be somewhat unaware, but okay. Mr. McBride.
Good evening. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year also. On the 2 issues, first issue is the lighting. That's a zoning ordinance requirement. We're not requesting a waiver or modification of it. We would like to suggest a better way to implement your requirement. Remember, this is a residential development. What happens is we go through, we get final subdivision plan approval, we bond it, we have 6 months to then record the lots. The way it normally works is the houses on those lots are selected during that 6-month period where you're marketing the property for new residents. So the orientation of the houses, the way the garages lay on the houses, we worked out in the preliminary plan. Reducing down to 5 houses we worked out. But the specific design of the houses, as well as the lamp posts and the lamps to go on those lamp posts, are the subject of your ARB. And in this situation, we won't be coming to you until after site plan for that. We're fully confident that the lamp posts, as well as the existing I think it's an acorn light at the entrance of Villages of Haymarket now will easily meet this lighting standard. Our problem with the photometric now is to do the photometric, you have to state exactly what lamp product you're using because they're all different. You really don't want to do that and then have it changed at the time of the ARB and have to come back. So what we would suggest is make it a condition of site plan that it will be addressed post-site plan approval. Again, it's a zoning ordinance requirement, so it doesn't go away after site plan is approved. And it will be addressed before the ARB. And at that time, we'll know exactly what lamp, we'll do the photometric. Also, once we're under construction, Basically, the town's going to come measure, or has the ability to come measure the lamps out at the right-of-way to make sure that that is met. I don't think it's a real issue. It's just a matter of which comes first, the chicken and the egg. We really do want to allow the market to determine the exact look of the houses and the lamppost lighting that we use, and we would do that at ARB approval. We're not trying to get out of any requirement for that. I think it's a little, as far as residential development, it's a little premature to do at final site plan. Any questions on the lighting issue? Second issue is the, quote, frontage issue. I thought we had dealt with that earlier at the preliminary plan. If you look at your plans, I'll submit to you that lot frontage in the subdivision ordinance, quoting, means that side of a lot abutting on a street or right-of-way and ordinarily regarded as the front of the lot, that it shall not be considered as the ordinary side of a corner lot. So what we had was, we do have lot frontage, but that's on Light Street. Washington Street was not frontage under the definition of this ordinance. You may recall, Commissioner Weir, we had discussions about what to do across that frontage. Everyone agreed, there's no streetscape to build because there's nothing for it to connect to across the town property. And what we did, instead of doing nothing, is we agreed to take the curb and gutter around the corner, tie the asphalt together, and more importantly, to extend the sidewalk around the corner and do the handicap ramp there, which actually became, or will become, a de facto bus stop, is what we heard from the community. They needed a bus area for the children to be away from the street and out of the mud. So that's what we did. That's what's on the plan. We're fully committed to that. I just don't know how to even estimate a streetscape, even if it were frontage under your ordinance that would require us to do that. I don't know how to do that when you don't have a set plan. So I guess we're in a little bit of a quandary there. We thought it was resolved. We don't see it as a specific requirement. I think you won't see a specific site from your ordinance in point number 2, and that's the reason. So again, we're not trying to get out of anything that's required. We think we've gone overboard. At the time of the preliminary plan, the extras, so to speak, were focused on the sidewalk wrapping around, on solving the drainage issue that partly emanates from the Harrow River tract, and on doing a high-quality buffering so that whatever the town does with their property, that's already done. So that's why we wanted to discuss these 2 points. Be happy to answer any questions about the second issue also.
I've got a couple. Can you refresh me on whether there's been a dedication of that parcel, or that part of the parcel,
Yes.
abutting Washington Street?
There will be. Yes.
And it's a dedication to the town, correct?
We do have dedication on our subdivision plat. The legal deed of subdivision and easement's already been reviewed, and no comments were received, so it is shown on the plat.
And that is dedicated to the town, correct? I think.
Mr. Chairman, I think when the time that the original project was approved, and as you can see it with our zoning maps,
There was an existing dedication, was there not, or something?
there was as part of the original. That's why you see
Correct.
kind of a little block out
Yeah.
there on Washington
I
Street.
think we're just adding a little bit.
And that was anticipation of the future applying to the road.
I mean, if there's a need for construction easements, we could add those, but I think you had talked about the grading, and I think the grading would work out. Yeah.
If I may, there's also a detail on the plan where he did check by doing almost a typical section over Washington Street to that closest building to make sure the grading would work, and it would
Right.
be 3-to-1 from where the back of the future sidewalk to the building.
While you're there, I'm assuming we're nowhere near any sort of engineering drawings
There's
or
no- yeah, there's-
nothing for that section?
No.
I don't- I can't can't speak for the rest of you all, but personally, given the work that we put into this over the last year, has it been that long?
It's actually been 2.5 years.
2.5 years. I'm amenable to that personally. I don't have a real issue, particularly since we don't even have anything engineered or anything planned, and quite frankly, I don't know if we have any funding for it in the very near future. And given that it's such a small section, and they're making the improvements for the bus stop, which quite frankly is long overdue and needed, I'm comfortable with that aspect. The lighting, I'm assuming we would handle prior to building permit?
We could come up with language, correct?
Prior to the building permit?
Correct. As you said, there are 2 lights already at the entrance to Dogwood Park Lane. Like I said, a discussion maybe is, I can't remember if there's one at the entrance of Washington Street and Blight Drive or not, the Acorn one.
No, it's
But I
not
think-
on Blight anyway.
But I think, correct, we could work with the building inspector so that we could verify the lighting standard during.
Is there one at the corner of Blight and Washington?
No.
No, there's 2 right here. There's one on opposing corners right here, but there's not one up here.
Is there a regular Cobra there or not?
A regular, I'm sorry?
Regular Cobra street light at Blight in Washington?
I don't think so.
But that's something, yes, we can work with the applicant and come up with some conditions language with the town attorney and the council to figure out a way to.
And as far as the
monitor
Acorn
that.
light there, if we can figure out where it goes relative to
Yeah.
the sidewalk, yeah, we can do that.
It'd be
I didn't
lighting-
bring that up right away. I thought that was kind of part of addressing the lighting across.
That would be lighting under 717, right?
Correct.
Anybody else have any issues? Give me a minute.
Do you need some reference language, Mr. Chairman?
No. Actually, do you have, could you
Is that-
approach for a moment? We're not going to need to waive anything with regard to the streetscape because there's no engineered drawing, there's no plan. So what do we,
I think what you would want to do is you go ahead and reference the site plan number, the date, and the sealed dates, and just say approve it to 585063, which is the final site plan requirements, and subject to 58509, which is the period of validity in construction improvements, and then just say,
with stipulation that
correct, that,
lighting under 58,717,
correct. Understand that the applicant and staff will work to address that. Basically, you're asking, we'll work it out before council
will
votes.
be addressed before the council meeting?
Correct. Something to that effect.
Now, is that on both issues, or?
I don't think we need to address the one, to be honest with you. That's my question. There's
Well,
no
I think
standard
just to
for
drive
it.
into the point, saying if you define frontage,
Yeah,
then by definition, the frontage is
then they're
compliance.
in compliance
If you look
already.
at other projects in town that have done this, Corals,
Yeah, and I remember all of our,
McDonald's, those had clear frontages along Washington streets.
and all of our conversations with them over the last, 2.5 years. We've never considered that frontage.
No, and I thought we were going to cover it with the,
I thought we had it settled with the wraparound
Yeah, if I
corner
might, just to
and the
clarify.
handicap ramp. So,
I'm sorry. Just to clarify, the other projects, Corals, which I was involved with, and the others, it truly is frontage under your ordinance.
That's what I just
the-
mentioned to them. Yeah. I mumble a lot. So. Apologize.
if you can bear with me for just a moment.
I was in the language, the conditional language, to figure out how to make
there's no frontage, it's saying
Okay.
John, are you okay with that? This is what you want to do that more?
Irrespective of what the definition is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to deal with the site lighting.
What's the actual piece we're talking about?
53 feet.
Want me to read this one?
I have no problem saying so moved.
Sure, do you need the dates of the plan or anything?
Yes, I do.
Marshall, can we make the call that that's not frontage, or is that a council decision to make?
Ultimately, it's not.
Ultimately, you make a recommendation, but ultimately it'll be the council's interpretation.
I'm just going to assume that, yeah. What day are you guys meeting in January?
Oh, if you hadn't asked.
6th, I think? No.
Yeah, I think we
Oh, no, that's 2012.
kept it as the actual date.
So that would be the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, I think?
7th.
7th? Okay, you got the specifics on the plans?
Final site plan, 2012, 11/30. FSP 20121130. I'm going to have to rewrite this for Sherry. Dated January 20th, 2012, I'm assuming? Correct, and sealed 11/29/12. I have no revision dates, it's just a seal.
Sealed 29/12. Okay. Anybody else have anything further? Complicated. In that case, I would move the Planning Commission forward the application for final site plan, FSP 20121130, dated January 20th, 2012, and sealed November 29, 2012, with a recommendation of approval in accordance with sections 558-5063 and 58509 of the Town Code, and conditioned upon the applicant and staff coordinating compliance with Code Section 58717 prior to the January 7, 2012 Town Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, you actually moved it. You don't usually do that. Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And that puts that one to bed. Okay. Which brings us to zoning text amendment, funeral home and crematory use. Mr. Schneider.
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is briefly go over the proposal, quote to you, or outline for you the various zoning and plan policies applicable to this proposal, and go through some recommendations for the commission. With us this evening is the applicant and his representative, Mr. Blasius, and also Mr. Foote, representing Mr. Blasius, who are also here to answer any questions that you may have. For disclosure purposes, I own property next to the proposed location, which I'll go through. It's 14950 Washington Street. I own this townhome right here. I do not, for disclosure purposes, I do not have a financial interest in this project, and believe I can provide a fair and unbiased evaluation of the application. So I wanted to get that into the record. So first, in November, the council adopted a resolution to attempt to amend the ordinance, which would be to allow a funeral home, or excuse me, a mortuary. Let me get this wrong. Everything calls it a little bit differently. Mortuary, funeral home, and crematory use within the B1 zoning district. They forward it to the commission for its review and recommendation with several stipulations. Typical language: does it meet the good welfare and planning of the town? Does it comport with the town's comprehensive plan? Are there any other factors with which the commission would want to review? So the commission has 65 days from this meeting with which to make its recommendation to the commission. The commission can either approve, deny, or provide alternate language for recommendation by the council. So quickly going through the proposal, or the specific property they're asking to establish this use, is this property right here, 14850 Washington Street. The proposed amendment would apply to the whole B1 district, and the B1 district is in the tan area that you see here. First would be establishing the mortuary funeral home by right, which means it would simply have to go through a site plan process, go through commission and council review, posted bond, and then it would be on its way. They've also proposed crematory use as a special use permit. That would require to go through public hearings by the commission and the council, and they would evaluate the appropriateness of the use in the district area and its compatibility with other uses around it, and establish any development conditions as necessary. So what you see today is predominantly residential use surrounding our B1 district. Blue is our medium-density residential or zoned R2 district. And then along the south is predominantly R1, which is our low-density residential district. So what it corresponds to in terms of our land use plan. If you move over to this map here, it actually crosses two planning areas. The area in orange is our transitional commercial district, which is meant, by its name, provide transition from low-intensity uses, residential uses, to our more intense downtown town center uses, and also transition somewhat to the western side of the town. And then within the yellow is also our neighborhood town center district. So quickly to go through those, what our policies say about the neighborhood town center is to provide a convenient focus for community activities and services such as neighborhood stores, offices, and restaurants. Our transitional district, like I just mentioned, transitioning from low-density residential, medium-density residential to our commercial core, should take into account, low-density commercial uses to serve as a distinct transition between low and moderate-density residential areas. They should take into account the impact of parking, lighting, and screening requirements of commercial uses when adjacent to planned residential uses. What some of the other B1 requirements that may be worth noting to you today is B1 districts require a 25-foot setback from residential uses. So in this case, within this district, any of these areas would be set 25 feet from any planned residential or zoned residential use. We also require parking to the side or to the rear of most of our uses within the B1 zoning district. That being said, in addition to permitting the mortuary funeral home use by right and the special use permit, we're also proposing to add definitions to our ordinance. One thing that is not addressed by the text amendment is parking. We do actually have a parking standards for mortuaries and liquor stores in the same category, minimum of 10 spaces. I guess they're intermixed. But which lends itself to believe at one time the town probably did have a funeral home as a permitted use, whether by special use permit or by right within the town. Part of this would probably want to recommend that a more appropriate parking standard be assigned. So in terms of the B1 district, its intent is primarily for retail shopping and personal services to be developed either as a unit or individual parcels orienting to attracting pedestrian shoppers, tourism, and local convenience. That is the intent of the B1 zoning district. Trying to think what else to describe to the town. I did briefly compare this to some of the other jurisdictions. Mr. Flood in his proposal noted some of the larger jurisdictions. I kind of narrowed it more down to towns of similar character and size. And so what you see in terms of the city of Manassas, Leesburg, Dumfries, except with the exception of Occoquan, most of these uses exclude crematory use within their commercial districts. Typically they're in their I districts, or they're limited to a special use permit. And then most of those smaller town B districts require a funeral home as a special use permit in the district. What that would allow you to do is adjust traffic, parking, and the like. Another kind of, it sounds kind of semantics, but a lot of these ordinances address or define mortuary differently. Some say funeral home. Some say, which is a mixture of not only doing the preparation of the remains, but also providing chapel services, kind of a full range of types of things. Mortuary seems to define itself more as strictly the preparation of the remains as well. And then you have a funeral chapel, which tends to be more of just like a regular chapel specific to dealing with funerals. Sorry, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what else to talk to you about it. What I recommended in the report is that you look at compatibility. One of the criteria for looking at this proposal or any zoning amendments is talking about the existing character and use of the area, trends or growth or change, transportation requirements, conservation of property values. So it's just looking at what these potential uses would mean to the adjacent residential use. And that can be either addressed through performance standards, looking at different districts with which to establish the use, and the like. Mr. Chairman, I believe that's it. I'll be happy to answer any additional questions.
I don't have any at this point. Anybody else?
No, at this point, I think there's still so much research that needs to be done at staff level to make this somewhat comport with our comp plan and our land use. Because as written now, I can't see allowing this in the B1 district even with an SUP. And a crematorium would definitely have to be in the I district and with a special use permit.
Mr. Foote, would you like to address the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Oh, long time no see.
Yes, sir.
Don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but...
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Foote. I'm with Walsh Litchfield, and I do represent Mr. Blasius and the Cross Corner. Mr. Blasius, you may even know his name. Mr. Blasius ran Blasius Baker Funeral Home in Manassas for many years. And he's interested in he sold the business, he's interested in getting back into it. And one of the things he knows from working with the community in this regard is that there's really nothing that serves this portion of Prince William County or Western Falk Earwood. The question of what to do with that, of course, is to acknowledge that the county does not presently permit this in the B1 zone. One of the things to observe about the proposal we have before you is that we are talking about a crematorium only as a special use permit. It is not a critical issue with respect to what he proposes to do with the property, for the simple reason that that's not going to be part of what he's doing. It would only be in the ordinance because if you're going to consider this, you might want to consider a crematorium at some point in the future. Obviously subject to planning commission hearings and board and town council action on special use permit. I must remember some of the stuff, one of the points that was made, and that is that this is in fact permitted as use by right in commercial zones, and every one of the jurisdictions that we have listed in the letter that we sent to Mr. Swearingen some time ago includes the town of Occoquan, includes Herman. We look for towns that are of more similar stripe to Haymarket. It's also permitted in Front Royal. There are jurisdictions in which this is permitted by right by right in an industrial zone. We didn't find any jurisdiction, and I'll check the same list. We didn't find any jurisdiction in which a funeral home / mortuary, which is in fact are defined in terms of the proposal before you, was required by special use permit in any jurisdiction that we looked at. The reason for that is that a funeral home is a business with exceptionally low impact. You know where they are. You've seen them all around the community, and the only time that they do present any impact to the community is, of course, during the course of a funeral, which doesn't occur every day, and which it can be from large to small. This site accommodates a substantial amount more parking than certainly the ordinance presently requires for mortuaries. The preliminary indications are that there can actually be as many as 128 parking spaces on this property, which would accommodate any need, and so you wouldn't be backing people up on the streets in order to conduct this stuff. It is a very low impact use, which is why it is treated in almost every jurisdiction in which Walsh Gillespie does business as nothing more than a business as an office business might be. So consequently, what we would suggest to you is that the proposition that this is high impact or that it overwhelms the facilities of a community even such as this would probably be incorrect and can be accommodated at the site plan stage. The other thing I wanted to make clear is that we had, when we went to the council to ask that this be initiated, and the council did initiate its consideration, we indicated to the council that one of the concerns we have is we're dealing with an unyielding seller, Mr. Chairman. What we have is a situation in which this is a bank-owned property. Ramsey Holding Company, which is the entity that is making the contract with Mr. Blasius and McGraw's Corner LLC, is a subsidiary of Burke and Herbert. And this is a property that has on its books that it is attempting to market, and it is driven a very difficult deal in these circumstances because it's not willing to wait the way that a private seller might be. This has a closing date of early next spring. And Mr. Blasius has to make some decisions as to whether he should go forward with this property, depending on what the council wishes to do with this application in due course. And so what we respectfully request the commission do is to schedule a public hearing for this as soon as you might do so, to make a recommendation so that we can move to the council and see what the council wants to do with that. The commission's made up its mind about this application. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Blasius can tell you more about what he proposes here. But we would respectfully request that the commission move this forward and make a recommendation one way or t'other with respect to it.
I'm going to invoke my priority to speak first on this. If you don't I've got no problem moving it to a public hearing. We can have a public hearing scheduled for next month. That's no big thing. And I don't mind doing that. But I'll be quite frank with you. I've got a lot of issues with it, and I'm somewhat concerned that sending it to public hearing at this point in time might be premature, because if we do substantive rewrites post public hearing, I think we're going to have to go back, because my suspicion is that if the Planning Commission is amenable to it, I would suspect at this point in time that there are going to be dramatic revisions to the text as presented. I have a variety of concerns. Unlike, quite frankly, we are one of the smallest towns in the state of Virginia, geographically speaking. And our B1 district is rather limited, and unfortunately the B1 provisions carry over to the B2 as well. So in essence, we would be approving this use not only in the B1 but the B2 as well, and there has been some thought of even extending that to the other commercial districts, which hasn't happened at this point in time. The problem is with the confined geographic nature of this town and its rather small geographic size. There are very limited places that you can actually put this, and I have very site-specific concerns with regard to the site that's accompanying this in terms of traffic, parking, access, or lack of road frontage in this particular instance, and the fact that this would back up to two different neighborhoods. And that's something that I'm going to need to see worked out prior to going forward. I quite frankly, I'd almost want to see some performance standards written into it, and I think the only way that we're going to accomplish that is through a special use permit process. I don't see by right working, just given the nature of the town. Again, I'm just one voice, but given its proximity to the residential area, given the limited additional volume that Washington Street at that point in the town can take, I've got some concerns. If it were further up on the western end of the town, where you've got a 4-lane highway, or if it were accessing off of 15, where you've got a 4-lane divided, I wouldn't be so concerned. But in looking at this text amendment, you're talking about the entirety of the B1 zoning district, and by extension the B2 zoning district. So, I mean, I can't just confine these comments to the places where I'd like to see it, but I've got to consider everywhere that it could be initiated, or that such a use could be initiated. Above and beyond that, I'm not convinced at this point in time that it really comports with the town's plan. Does it promote foot traffic for a walking town? That's what seems to be the goal of everybody. I'm not sure that that's really going to further that aim of the town. Again, if it's a special use permit, the council can deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I'd be a little more amenable to it. But at least at this point, I'm not real comfortable with a straight B1 zoning change that's going to make it an allowed use under any circumstance.
You're echoing my sentiments exactly. I agree with you that more on the western end, and being some type of special use permit in our B2 district seems to be something that would comport just a little more with our comp plan and our, projected land use. Parking is going to be an issue on that property with traffic coming out. And with the traffic impact we have in town, you need a larger feeder road for them to come out onto.
Ralph?
I have a similar concern, particularly in terms of traffic. You say you can put 128 spaces there. I'm sure you can, but there's also, if you're going to have 1 chapel, 2 chapels, 3 chapels, 4 chapels, the general size of the footprint of the building, if you're going to have a crematorium in there, where you're going to put all of that and the parking spaces. I mean, you could pack that thing with parking spaces, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the cars can queue up effectively and get out of that space effectively, which is something that would be highly desirous. Obviously, you're going to have a police escort, but still, if people are backing and throwing and toing, trying to queue up for a procession, that's going to be an issue. And you have a very narrow tongue of land there to get out. I don't know that you could put a structure there. If parking is supposed to be behind and beside a building, that's somewhat of an issue. Taking a look at the other parcels that are in there, you've got similar issues. So it seems to me a problematic piece of land in the way that it's structured and the effective flow of traffic and not having horrific impact on Washington. So that would be my primary concern. Effective use, effective screening, and moving traffic in and out of there. Chris?
I definitely, knowing the property and knowing, like you said, how narrow that property is. I mean, it's just a straight back tract of land without seeing some sort of plan as to how you intend to set that up, as to how the vehicles are going to be staged. I mean, more even for yourselves, how it's if it's something that works for you. I will say. I was just thinking, I'm sitting here and I was kind of going through the funeral homes that I know and where they are. The one that stands out most to me sits right on the intersection, I believe, Maple and 123, or 123, right there in the town of Vienna.
Yeah, I think that's
right smack in the center of Vienna. And that, I mean, honestly, is where my grandfather was set. So to have something like that in the middle of the town, and I don't mean to overstep my bounds on my first night, but I actually do believe that you could actually, I think that it could provide something to the town, whether it be from a respective community, with the proper plans and bring in something that aesthetically, falls within the town's requirements. I just think that I want to be very upfront. I just think it needs to make sense for the town, but as well for you. We need to know that narrow strip of land is going to be sufficient. I think, just like I'm echoing everybody else's sentiments. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, what I would say in response is that it is always a conundrum for any landowner or purchaser of land, contractor of land, to deal with the site-specific concerns that you're articulating when there's not even an ordinance that permits the use. No one would expend the money on the engineering of the site if it were not, in fact, permitted in the ordinance. You wouldn't do that. I can tell you that Mr. Blasius has done enough analysis of the site to suggest that it can work. It does work satisfactorily. That being said, I'm no fool. I can listen to what I'm hearing here, and one of the concerns that we will have to articulate is that we have a seller that won't abide the kind of time that I think that the council, the commission, and council may wish to take with respect to the issues presented by the use. That's obviously your call, and it's simply information for you. I will, of course, consult with Mr. Blasius about your comments this evening and what we might be looking at in terms of time, and we'll deal with Mr. Schneider. We'll talk to Mr. Schneider about it later, but I'm very grateful for the candid discussion that you've given me this evening. One of the things that, as you know, we deal with in the world that I live in, I frequently tell people that we sell the unwanted to the unwilling in the world of land use, is the more information we have, the better we can advise our clients and the better we can help them get where they want to go. So what you've told us this evening is something Mr. Blaze is listening to as I am, and we can deal with it.
That being said, would you like us just to carry this over to the next meeting, or would you like us to go ahead and set up
I would like
public
for you,
hearing?
if you would, Mr. Chairman, to go ahead and set the public hearing. We will advise you whether that looks like it's likely to work, and we'll give you plenty of advance notice of that. But rather than not do that, I think I owe it to Mr. Blaze to ask you to do so.
I believe our town planner had comment, and
Oh, I just had a couple of comments. Mr. Foote and I, we relate to what we know. I deal more in Loudoun County and those areas, and just, I guess, as a counterpoint, the areas that I looked at in terms of just special use permits were the city of Manassas, Manassas in general, Middleburg, Dumfries, Leesburg, and Occoquan. Those, to me, have the more smaller lot downtown areas, and typically in those downtown areas, and given us, we're kind of a small, we have small lots, so typically it's through the special use permit process. Crematory is generally limited out to the industrial area. So, as again, we work in the areas that we know best, and those would typically have it. And I think what that does is because we have so many individual lots with so many individual characteristics, it does allow you through the special use permit process to deal with those in some manner, compatibility and the like. I think at a minimum you would need to address the parking standard with this. A minimum of 10 spaces I don't believe will work. So that's the alternative. I think what I hear Mr. Foote saying is he'd like this to go forward in the current as written. That is, parking is not addressed as part of that. Recommend approval, denial, or you can recommend your alternatives, but it sounds like if the commission's willing to move it forward under his suggestion, you would simply go forward as is without addressing the...
No, I don't know that that's not necessarily the case.
Okay.
If we've submitted an application, once that's noticed for public hearing, the council and commission have a very substantial degree of flexibility in the Virginia law to make recommendations as to what the text ought to be. And so if we may work with Mr. Schneider to come up with some additional language that might present you for considerations for performance standards, Mr. Chairman, so that we can move the ball beyond the concerns that we've heard here, if that's what we intend to do. It's not frozen in stone is what we've got. We had to start this in some way. What I did was I evaluated a number of jurisdictions. Mr. Chairman, as you know, I work in about 30 separate jurisdictions in Virginia, and I've seen these issues come up just everywhere you can shake a stick at, and we can always work with Mr. Schneider and with the council.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't want to confirm what what you wanted for your recommendation
Well,
going
what we're
forward.
always looking for
are
is
you looking for a joint
success.
with council or a separate piece?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Foote. That is correct.
It was a consideration,
And it was
however, so
consideration,
it's part of the deal.
but it would require a special use permit.
Well, you
under
can,
this
again, you
particular
can, you
zoning
don't
text.
have to
Have
move
to,
it forward in
yeah.
its current form. You can propose your alternative language as well.
Do we have a,
Are we looking to do this January 14th?
do we have a text number for this? Do we have a plan number for this? Or is it just,
This is just a amendment. I don't even...
you guys haven't assigned a number to it?
No, we have not. We can assign a number to it.
I'll just,
Did you have any other
I'll
questions
assign
or any
a
other
number.
guidance we can
No,
provide you
I-
on this, or?
I think we're going to need to talk offline on a variety of other issues. I mean, at this point in time, if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and just set the public hearing for the, obviously for the text as existent. I think what I would like you to do
Okay.
at some point is get a legal determination as to at what point, post-public hearing, if we do substantive amendments to the text, will a second public hearing be required?
Okay.
My suspicion is it's going to arrive at that state, and we're not going to get away with a single public hearing, because I have a suspicion that the text is going to change dramatically into something that is vastly different than what's currently presented.
Well,
Well, that's why I was asking for
their
clarification of what
plan,
he wanted moved
He
forward.
wants this moved forward as is, as an initial starting point. I think I've explained to him that my feeling is we're going to end up with two 2 public hearings at the end of the day.
Well, the impression
If it
I
gets to
just
that.
got was he wants us to set this public hearing, but before, I'm assuming our ad date, he wanted to work with Marchant.
Yeah.
So they
I
had
got no
that.
objection to
Well,
that.
we'll work that out. I'm a little leery of accepting recommendations for hearing without getting your input. What I had expected was that you would come up with your recommendation, and we would move that forward to hearing either, with 2 options, either A or B. But I can talk with Lisa on the mechanics of it. It was a little
Yeah, I mean,
unusual.
he wants to move forward to a public hearing, that's fine with me.
Okay.
He's aware of what the risks of doing it in this fashion are.
And the contract doesn't regulate your timeline.
No, the contract is
And
irrelevant.
when the commission moves it forward, part of your criteria, as part of the council's charge, is developing findings that does it comport with a comprehensive plan? Does it mitigate, does it good health and zoning welfare? There's all these, and I outlined them for you in your report. Those are all factors you need to take into account as part of it. I would think the one funeral home that I went to a funeral at the one you were thinking about, probably argue that pre-existed a lot of the
Yeah.
areas that are around it.
The vast majority of funeral homes that I'm thinking of have been there a long time. And things have grown around them.
And then there's, part of it was funny too, not funny, I shouldn't say that about funeral homes, is there seems to be kind of like satellite offices. And there's some of the folks that, there's been more than one interest in establishing a funeral home in the town. And some were saying, describe it as like a satellite office. In other words, crematorium is done over in your I district, in your industrial district. You do your embalming at one facility, and you have these satellite offices that are simply a funeral chapel where you go in and actually do the viewings, pick your casket, set up the logistics. And so those are types of things that, so there's ways to say, if you wanted to say just a funeral chapel without the embalming, without the cremation, those are other things that you need to look at as well.
But that makes their land purchase a little more difficult, particularly if they're looking at this, a single piece of land, and then they've got to purchase land somewhere else for additional facilities.
Well, what happens is if they're a single operator, that lends itself
That's
to...
what it sounds like he is.
Yeah, if he's a single operator, then yes, you would have it there. I think, to be quite frank with you, and I wish he was still here to hear me talking about this, I really didn't get to go expand on this. Crematorium, put it this way, you're regulated by the EPA. So I don't know that we would want a crematorium in any fashion in our town. Most of the ones that we have is a special use permit, and it's in your industrial district. So
And
the ones
we're
I can
turning
think
our
of,
industrial district into
Yeah.
a children's playground for the most part,
So-
so that just, I don't
I guess my recommendation would be is that to kick out if you are to make a recommendation in support of it, kick out the crematorium, make it a special use permit, establish some performance standards, establish some parking standards. The biggest issue also with parking, we don't have on-street parking, we don't have public parking. So if there's a big event,
Well, see, and that's,
Yeah, so-
Green Hill Crossing, or Green Hill is right across the street there. Do you just, offhand, do you know what the frontage on that piece is?
on his piece,
Yeah.
it's
Not very
50
big.
feet, maybe?
With how much of that taken by the roadway?
Wow.
That you would
50
have
feet
to...
in frontage, I mean.
I
That's
was saying,
all
how
I'm
much
looking
are you
at.
going to, how much of that 50-foot of frontage are you going to use just for your driveway?
Well, and to your point, you brought up, is you can't put parking to the side or the rear, so he would need some kind of waiver of the zoning ordinance to,
And you've got no room for a turn lane because of the
Yeah.
adjoining property owners.
so.
One of which I know isn't going to sell, and the other one can't because you would put the right turn in lane through the waiting
Through the
room of
building.
the vet's office.
Yeah. And with that lot, I mean, you could say if you put it, you're getting past the ordinance requirements, you could tuck it back there away, but this could go in anywhere in the B1 zoning
Yeah,
district.
and that's the
I mean,
original.
there is some talk about, a funeral home being a multiplier in terms of, people are going to buy flowers for the funerals. People are going to hopefully stay and eat in our restaurants. So there's a multiplier effect. It's just the
Drink more
intensity
wine.
of the use at that location. With the B2, like you said, we're proximate more to the road. The B2 standards actually talk about the better ability to handle traffic on this end of town. Obviously, the owner doesn't want to hear that because they're looking at that specific property. But that's and I forgot about the point that all B1 districts go into the B2 district. So that doesn't help the applicant, but maybe better addresses Winterham. There's some interest in turning Winterham into a funeral home. Parking may be an issue there as well. So
Probably.
anyway,
All right, if there's no further discussion.
Jim, do you have any points that any of us missed?
No, I think I would tend to agree with Marchand that the B1 is probably not the especially this particular site is not one.
So are we just scheduling this public
Yeah, if
hearing
there's
for
no
our
objection.
January 14th meeting?
Is it January 14th?
I believe so. That, Sherry, that is correct, isn't it? PC's January 14th.
In that case, if there's no objection, I would direct the clerk's office to set what I guess we will now refer to as zoning text amendment Blasius 121012 for public hearing at the January 14th Planning Commission meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, what am I advertising? Just the or talking to
You
Lisa
are
about
advertising
the language as
the
proposed?
language as proposed.
Okay.
And I have no issue with doing that. The question to Lisa is there a threshold at which amendment of the text as presented at the public hearing will require a second public hearing?
Okay.
I suspect that there is. I just don't know what that threshold is.
Well, generally, the rule of thumb is
I have a
it's less,
suspicion
it's
we're going
less
to end up...
intense. Usually with most of your rezonings, let's say you're developing 4,000 units, you come back with 3,500. The intensity of the use is narrowed, and so you typically don't have to go back to hearing. But is it more restricted by going through a special use permit process or something else?
I have a suspicion the actual zoning category, if there's a recommendation at all, will probably change from B1 to something else. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Takes care of that issue. Which brings us to the zoning waiver application.
I'm here representing the town. As you know, we are in the process of renovating the building that we call the old post office that fronts Washington Street on this property. In order to get power to the building, we have to go from the current power pole, which is on the, I guess, actually located at the southeast corner of adjacent property, which is Exit Heritage Realty Property. The request is that we're asking for a waiver from the requirement that we install the utility connection in the ground. The reason is it's a pretty difficult topographical situation there. Dominion Power engineer has looked at the situation and suggested that we bring the power control up to the western side of the driveway that runs beside the building, and then go straight across that western side is going to take out quite a bit of some trees and shrubbery and most of the screen between those two buildings, and then we will go across the current driveway or parking area, which may or may not in the future be removed. So we're just not sure what's going to happen with that in the future. For those reasons, we would like to request of the Planning Commission that we be allowed to have an exception to that requirement and make our connection directly overhead from that pole to the rear western corner of the building. It would be about 60 feet above ground. From the west, it would be screened by the shrubbery. Coming from the east, it would be screened by the building itself, so it would be very difficult to be seen. And it really would be difficult to be seen from anywhere else on the town center.
Rebecca?
Do we just need, I don't have any
I do.
concern, I think this is relatively simple. I mean, it was viewed upon that, this was just, it was already set up that way. I just waiver.
Not a reason.
Ralph?
In that this is going to be retail space, and at one time I believe I saw something about a porch patio, something out there. Do we have any kind of safety considerations with overhead power lines?
Well, I think it's going to be high enough above the area that would be used. That, the plan for using that as a patio is, I'm not sure that's going to work out. The potential tenant who was interested in doing that has kind of dropped out. So we're still looking for a tenant that most likely, if I had to guess at this point, I would say it's some type of retail. And I don't know if it's patio or that kind of
Can that ever be a driveway? I mean, can that go back into use as a driveway?
You know, it could, but there is an entrance to the building on that side of the building. There will be, that's where the handicap ramp will be located.
Oh,
So it would be
problematic at best.
And, I mean, even now, it's the sight distance when you're coming down beside the building there. is pretty good.
Zero, yeah. No, I've driven out that thing before. So,
The only concern I have with power lines, I think I'm in agreement with the fact that, the power was there before. The only concern I would have was the cost of maintenance in the trees to keep the leaves and stuff just fall on the lines. But just like you're shaking your head, it's negligible. I don't have an issue with it.
I move that the Planning Commission forward the request for a waiver to Section 58-185 of the Town Code for 15020 Washington Street, the old post office building, for reasons of existing topography and environmental controls.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
hi.
Aye.
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 Really, Bob, I came to your meeting just to talk about that? You didn't even recognize me?
You're supposed to be here at citizens' time.
I'm not a citizen.
You really wanted to talk about it?
I did, because I thought you were going to get pushback.
No?
That strategy was just given away.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
He's representing the town.
Town planner report.
But sometimes the Democratic way and the
Personal call?
My pushback was handled by the motion in what it didn't say. My concern has been alleviated. Marchant looks lost.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of
He's looking for the ticking
half-cocked
time bomb.
today. Married with children, that's all I can say. What's up next? Town planner report. Okay, there we go. If you've been down to the ice rink lately, if you haven't been, I'd encourage you to go down there. They went ahead and did the perimeter landscaping at the ice rink. Looks quite attractive down there. They're still screening the chiller on the outside. And they actually want to come in with an alternate proposal to build a, what would you call it? You know, right now where you go into the ice rink, it was supposed to be 2 stories there. They actually want to build a second story that comes out into the parking lot, like an overhang, and use that as their entertainment facilities, do their party facilities, and other types of things. So that would trade off for doing a second addition in the back. So we should be seeing that within the next few months. McDonald's will be vetting some architectural changes to McDonald's at the ARB next week, or this week? This week?
Is that for stacking?
What's that?
Is that for stacking?
No, this is strictly aesthetics. We outlined that there's an issue with double drive-throughs and signage and the like. This is simply vetting the architectural. And it's quite a contrast to what is out there today. I'll say that. We're starting to gear up for sheets. We've had several meetings and some fits and starts, but they seem to be serious about coming forward also with their architectural drawings for the reconstruction of the sheets, tear down and rebuild. In both instances, McDonald's and Sheets, we don't have an ordinance specifically to deal with them. We don't have an ordinance to deal with gas stations. We don't have an signed ordinance to deal with fast food restaurants. And fast food restaurants has the menu board, has the internally lighted signage, has the little swoops that they want to put over the drive-through, the same McDonald's on it. So as part of that, and hopefully at the same time we're addressing the historic district, we can What I had suggested then was go ahead and show what you want, and we'll look at that as part of looking at the sign ordinance. Same thing with sheets, wanting the canopy signage, wanting the signage on the pumps. Right now, they go out there and fasten cardboard signs to every freestanding pole you can find. A lot of what they want to do is would not be would go away as part of the redevelopment of that site. Trying to think what else. Did I miss anything?
I have this
Training thing, okay. But that's all I have. Things are happening. We're going to be busy in the next couple of months. We did. I'm sorry, I got one more thing. We did vet the. I was asked to speak at the ARB about the town center master plan, which I believe we had talked to the commission about that.
Not recently.
I think it's coming to you, but
We
vetted
haven't
some.
met
Just to approve the initial draft, yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll be coming back in the next
Well, we
few
didn't-
months.
It wasn't
Well-
even formal. We all looked at it
Yeah.
because
Yep.
they're still in the very planning.
Right.
But it's going to look to be busy. I think the next spring is going to be a pretty busy time for the town. If the streetscape's not going on, 66 is going to be expanding, and we're going to have some of these businesses redeveloping in town. So, thank you.
Gene, you got something?
An organization called Plan Virginia, which is part of Virginia Tech. They have a certification program for planning commissioners. They're going to have another round of training, and this is some information about them. They'll have a round of training in Leesburg, starting in January. And I wanted to just see if there was any interest here. The first, it's divided into two-day sessions. The first one would be Friday and Saturday, January 11th and 12th. The final session would be Friday and Saturday, March 22nd and 23rd. There's a lot of good information. You will get a certification as a planning commissioner. Mike Chandler is the teacher of the program. He's been here before to talk to us, and he's really good with this and very impressive as far as his knowledge of planning and development. The cost of the course is $450. Depending on how many of you want to go, we may have to ask the council for some additional funding, but I just wanted to throw this out here first and see.
Jay didn't shudder when you said that.
See if any of you are-
Studiously ignoring it.
Because I'm pretty sure that only one of you really would need to go, not all of them.
But if you could, I guess the thing to do is just either let me or Marchant know if you're interested, and we'll see what we can work out for you. It is, I will tell you that it is it's a commitment of time. There are assignments. I mean, it's a regular course, so it's.
You just have to show up for class
Yeah,
for
it's,
2 days in January and 2 days in March.
yeah, there are some commitments here in terms of the effort that you make. So it's, if you're not sure that you have the time to do it, that would be I would say that would be a strong consideration.
Are they like 2 8-hour classes, which is morning to night? What do you?
Yeah, it would be, the 2 days generally run from about 9 to 4:30, and so there'd be 4 days like that. And, they're
With
very
homework
full
and
days.
assignments in between.
I took the course 4 years ago, and it was pretty, they were full days, so it was a lot of information.
You get to meet other people from other jurisdictions and swap stories and drinks. And
I'm xenophobic, so that probably wouldn't work for me.
What were the days in January, Gene? Just
11th and 12th.
12th.
It's a weekend, it's not fun.
Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, it's a Friday and Saturday. And this is being held in Leesburg.
Leesburg at the IMA Recreation Center. I'm sorry, Ida Lee Recreation Center.
Wing Developments?
Yep. John Marshall Commons is a rezoning that's been put in. And I'll try to orient you to the site. See over there.
It's the yellow house at Kid Harpin.
Okay. Is that?
The yellow house at the corner of Kid Harpin and 55.
Oh, it's not that far down.
Sure it is.
This is this is Pace West. This is the office building next to it with, you know what I mean, not been on the same page. This is the office building that's out there today that has the Catholic school in it, the doctor. This is the old 3 Rs building, 4 Rs. This is the Piedmont Center with the Rainbow Row and karate and all the other stuff.
Okay.
Then the next one down, you start to get toward the Gossam properties, and then this is the road that goes along the elementary school back to the ball fields. And this is at the end of that road. So the development property is actually this wing right here, and then this wing right here on either side of that commercial development. And what they want to propose,
now things are coming together.
this is the backside of Alexander's Keep.
Does it include that parcel immediately adjacent to Alexander's Keep?
Where the stormwater is?
Where the
Yes.
stormwater is?
Uh-huh.
Oh, boy.
Existing underground. So, the proposal is 208 single-family, 208 multifamily and 108 townhouses. So,
Current zoning category on the land?
I can double check for you. A1.
So this isn't the parcel that was rezoned previously?
No, I'm sorry, you and I, when we were speaking, I think I was, so this is the, in the Rainbow Road, this is the existing office building, this is Pace West. This would be the predominantly multifamily units, and then on the other side would be all the single-family attached units,
Single family attached.
townhomes.
I think you know what my initial response is.
And it's multifamily, it's apartments.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yes.
It's rentals.
That's planning lingo, sorry.
No, I know. I just wanted to make sure they weren't condos. They
And
they
the
are apartments.
developer is?
Haymarket Development LLC, probably Michelle. Trusted Management and Services, and Ryan Farone. It's a total of 27 acres, 208 multifamily, 102 single-family attached. It would be equivalent to a lot of units per acre.
Any idea what the VPD is?
Vehicle trips per day. They are providing some trails along.
I don't care about trails. How many cars on 55
TIA was prepared.
and not
The
submitted?
VDOT 527 is not required because the counts were less than 5,000 for the project. So less than 5,000.
I'm not buying that.
Provides for interparcel access.
Okay, how many townhomes?
What was the
108,
108.
How many apartments?
200, oh sorry,
208,
102.
Okay, 102.
102 and 208?
102 townhomes, 208 multifamily.
Yeah, can we just start calling them apartments?
Yes,
That'll make me happy.
Apartments and townhomes.
2, 4, 46.
Where those people live. Like,
That will be
most of
stricken
the
from the
town
record.
council- Most of the town council and the staff live in those types of homes.
Those townhouses.
Scotty used to refer to those as Long Street people.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, they're not. I mean, they're operating the standard fire rescue.
It's roughly
amounts.
1,400 trips a day.
Community design, proffering 31,000 per unit per townhome, and 19,000 per multifamily unit. 31,000. Other libraries would be covered under that same amount.
I take it your initial recommendation is a negative one?
Well, this is supposed to be the CEC, which is Community Employment Center. And they're kind of blowing out that concept by reducing by 3,000 units. I think what you're starting to see is with the hospital and all the jobs that are going to spin off of that, all the multipliers of medical office that we're starting to see, where are all those workers going to live? The only multifamily units you can really see right now are over on over by Glory Days.
Or also
Somerset.
over down in...
Somerset, that's the only local really.
No, they're down at the corner of 15 and 25. 29 as well.
Madison Crescent,
Madison Crescent.
a little more expensive.
And your point would be?
If I'm working at a medical doctor's office as a technician, I'm probably going to live somewhere else. So all I'm saying is Walmart, a lot of these service level jobs that we're starting to see, people are going to need a place to live, so people were kind of speculating in advance of that kind of development.
And the impact on the town is overwhelmingly negative.
Unless we, playing devil's advocate, if we bring in our streetscape, maybe we'll get more people coming into town.
I
They'll
can't
be
turn
driving
out,
and backed up, but they'll be...
I can't turn out of St. Paul as it is.
So,
Well, hey, the county's just trying to really help us make sure we have that walking town, because
Cars
we're
aren't
gonna
getting
have
out.
to walk everywhere.
In the road and walk.
it's in its first round of review. The town has the ability to provide comments to the planning staff. They're not always answered by the applicant. I think all we can really do is quote that this is our civic end of town. We transitioned from more moderate density uses into our town center. This is kind of establishing a high density facility on the west. We do have concerns about the road network.
The usual.
The usual. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, once 66 expands, the interchange gets done, and hopefully the Haymarket bypass will be built. Hopefully that will be the reliever of some of the traffic that we see through the town, but that's
Don't hold your breath waiting for the bypass. All right.
Okay, so in the first round of comments, I generally provide comments the first couple of rounds, and then we bring it to the commission for their final recommendation.
Do we know who the applicant's attorneys are? Can you glean that from that? Not like I have to be really guess, but I can tell from
Furrow and Associates Engineering.
Can you spell that one more time?
I'm sorry. F-O-R-O-U-G-H-I. And Associates Engineering, P-L-L-C.
Can I see that for a moment?
What was his first name? Is that the same guy that you mentioned in
I think I just made a connection now. It might be the same guy.
What's his first name?
I have to look.
I want the cover sheet.
I'm sorry.
The whole thing.
Ryan.
Handwritten?
So basically, for another reference,
Interesting.
we're looking at, all right here would be the 208 multifamily units.
Could you email us copies of all of this when you get the opportunity?
Scan it.
Okay. Yeah. At least we know ahead of time. Comp plan, back burner until the ZTAs are done, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir, and then the ZTAs is,
Back burner until we get guidance from council on historic overlay district.
I'm
definitions I'll continue
assuming,
to knock out, and the other small ones that we can change.
is it worth the additional expense of 2 sets of public hearings and just knock out I mean, I'm amenable to doing it. I mean, there are some things we could knock out in a great big hurry. But if we're going to go to the expense of having, it's going to be a very expensive public hearing for some of those ZTAs, just because of the scope of what's going to be done. And I don't, we were talking about this last month, particularly with the sign ordinance and that, I don't personally think it makes any sense for us to go about rewriting the sign ordinance at this point in time until we make a determination on the historic district. Because if we collapse the historic district to a smaller footprint, we're almost by default going to have to change the basis of our sign ordinance, correct?
Correct. It's the approach that you want to take. Right now, we regulate it by business district, or by zoning district, and that if a property ever gets rezoned, you're now having one standard in the middle of another standard. So, which was kind of the issue with Piedmont Tire and Auto. They were their own zoning district, amongst others. So, and then just how it behaves. Our town core is more small, lower speeds, more pedestrian oriented versus our vehicular west. That seems to be the biggest argument, is that driving at the speeds on the west side of town, you can't see the signs, and they're too far, buildings are too far back. So I think that is worth going through that. I think definitions is definitely something we should go through. There's a bunch of other just small little scrivener's notes that I've noted over time.
This packet still applies generally, correct?
Correct.
All right.
So,
If there's no dissent, I really don't think we need to, I'd rather handle it sort of start at the top and go all the way to the end and just do it all at one time. It might be a long meeting when we do that. But I'd rather get the input from council first as to what their thoughts are on the historic district, because it's going to impact so many things. And rather than start writing little bits and pieces, which may or may not ultimately have some sort of impact on something else that we change.
well, I think the big two things that we need to address kind of immediately is the requirement for a site plan. I suggest, like right now, it basically says any change of use, you have to have a site plan. So if tenants change out at Leeberry, technically they're supposed to submit a site plan every time they change out. I've added some language on how to fix that. There's also the issue with the
I don't see
ARB.
that in this packet.
What's that?
Is that in this packet that we've had?
I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that one in the packet? Okay.
No. What section is it?
I thought it was the packet I sent out to you last month.
No, I don't
It
recall
was
seeing that
three.
at all.
Let's see real quick. The other one is dealing with the ARB and their 14-day.
That I vaguely remember, but I don't remember the site plan one.
Before a building permit shall be
Oh.
considered any property in the district and used from a
Herb.
previous user, change it into non-conforming activity.
How crucial is that we do that this month? I mean, really?
Well, no, not that crucial, but it's one of those nagging things that,
Yeah,
um,
but you're going to have to do that in every zoning district, so does it make sense to do that separately and rather than incorporate it into a larger?
we can do that.
Because I mean,
There's
I
a
think-
bunch
I
of
think-
little idiosyncrasies that we can address.
Yeah, I think we're still looking at two sets of zoning text amendments going forward from here.
Okay.
The easy stuff, and then
Low-hanging fruit.
and then the stuff that's going to take a good bit of work. But I still don't believe that we should expend any effort on this until we get that baseline question answered, because that's going to have an impact on so many different sections that may actually impact these as well.
Okay.
And we just, I want to have a clear point of reference to what the aim is and what we're headed for before we start doing the wholesale
Sorry
rewrite,
to-
which we're going to probably have to do.
Sorry to belabor the discussion, but essentially the proposal to council is to go ahead and shrink back down to the size that the commission vetted about a year ago.
The argument I'm going to make is that if the council is intent on pursuing CLG status,
Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot about that nuance.
there is no way, in my estimation, given what the requirements are and what the statutes are for CLG status, that we can accommodate that, leaving the entirety of the historic district, or leaving the entirety of the town as the historic district. You weren't here, or
I'm sorry,
you didn't have a
I-
chance, but I've got some representative maps
Were
from
you
other
here last
towns.
month for this? Well, what happened was when they, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Everyone likes to say when Disney happened, when Disney came out, the town at that point did not have an historic district. So it seemed the easiest way to kind of control the development within the town beyond its ordinances was just create an overlay. So they just said, whole town, we'll worry about it later. So that's what went forward. And so the state says you can go ahead and establish that district, set up your board, set up your design guidelines. But what happens, there's another segment called CLG, Certified Local Government, which registers your district and allows you to qualify for certain grants and other types of things.
Thus, it's now later.
Yeah. So what's happened later is that typically the CLG, they want some kind of integrity of the district. What they've said is that it's so vast, so many buildings within it are unlike the Haymarket vernacular, and even those buildings that are old and historic have been tinkered with to the point where it would be hard over the area that we encompass to justify qualifying for it. So the commission had vetted shrinking down the district more or less to our corridors along Washington Street in Old Carolina, and then exclude the HOAs, exclude parts of our commercial district or our I district, and then that went forward and was later denied by the council. So I believe it's Councilwoman
Harness.
Harnest that wants us to go for the CLG status again, but they're likely to say you got to shrink it, you got to have resumes for all your staff, you got to hold so many meetings, you got to do so much training. There's a cost, and then you have to report that every year, so it's a little more involved.
But the threshold is you have to shrink the district.
I
So
think that was, what, number 2 on the checklist. You had to have
Yeah,
delineated
after write
boundaries.
check.
Yep. So, I mean, there's value in doing it, and it's got to be sensitive, because once you take properties out, it's very hard to get them back in. So, there is some value in doing that, though. Administratively, and I think part of the argument is HOAs already have an architectural review, and if they're away from our major corridors, do we really worry in terms of efficiency? Right now, as I'm sure you know, pulling a deck permit, it's like, you know, I was a zoning administrator at Middleburg when I first moved here. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm a better job administrating these ordinances than some other people did. But it was 2 months to get a deck approved. So I think that would allow people to get through the development process a lot more quickly and get the turnaround we need. So.
I hate to be a layman about it, but I mean, my bottom line is if the value, the benefit outweighs the process, then okay, let's move forward. If it doesn't, if we don't reap enough benefit, then why put forth the effort? I guess it's. But without reading as much into it as I need to, you know what I mean? If the value is there, if the benefit's there,
Yeah.
do it.
So,
But there has to be the will of council before
Right.
I'm willing to expend a whole lot of our. If
Right,
the
right.
council comes back and say they're not willing to make the historic district smaller, or at least entertain the idea, then our job is easy.
Yeah.
Our report's real simple. We recommend no, because you can't reach the standard. So. Now, if they come back and say they are willing to reduce the historic district, then we've
We
got
actually
work.
have to work.
Yeah. So.
thank
Anything
you,
else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm done.
Anything else from the commission?
Motion to adjourn?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Jed, before you take off, I've got something you're going to love.